I'm also a believer, as Andrew would have put it this morning. And it seems that today I'm fighting with very big companies who've got very big numbers. And I have my secret weapons, and I'm going to show you in a little while. Yeah. So I put the first slide, here, and in this one I have chosen the image of implant, where we reside as Alpha, in the mist. And I've written on top of it 2 typical presentation style sentences. Our clients wanted a globalization strategy that with local support from the Asia region one day. And Alpha CRC also needed to expand its global reach to Asia. So this is typical, what you will normally find written in presentation. But in reality, what happened was this. One day, I got a phone call from one of my clients, and they said, Fernando, we're going global. If you don't set up offices in Asia, you can't forget your business with us. And that day, Fernando was in trouble. And I had to start to do something about that. And so I worked out with, some people and some of my contacts to start and set up offices in Asia. Behind this sentence, Fernando, you gotta really set up in Asia, there are some themes that go with that, right? So our clients wanted us to have much more control into resource base, much more controls over production than directly in country. They wanted to have us to follow what is called these days the follow the sun model, right? In which we are available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and more importantly, 366 days a year, in which every year is a leap year in reality. So we have to add always 1 day to each year. And another important theme about that is the need to do localization, what is called localization. So to be simultaneously global, so presence everywhere, but do things in a very local way. As a side of this, another thing which I haven't written down was this. They needed us to be able to process payment transactions in the local currencies. So Koreans wanted to pay Korean money in a Korean bank. Japanese wanted to pay Japanese money in a Japanese bank, and China the same. So Alpha CRC in 2011 looked like this, right? We were very regionally focused. We have an awful lot of offices in Europe, mostly because we dealt with an awful lot of European languages. Some offices in America, North and South America, but in Asia, as you can see, complete blank. And today, we got 3 offices. So the thing is, how do we make it happen? So I'm going to tell you 3 stories today. Not in a sequential way, because we opened first in Japan, a month later in Shanghai, and finally in Korea in January this year. But I'm going to do it as Quentin Tarantino would do it, going from number 1 to number 3 with a flashback to number 2. So these are my secret weapons today against Huawei with, how many? 30,000 foreign employees? Something like that. Adobe. 10,000 or so. So we have 11 people, Mazinga Zs, in our Tokyo office. We have 4 people, Take 5 in our Seoul office. And we have Kung Fu Panda, 11 of them, in our Shanghai office. So I'm going to tell you these 3 stories because I want to let you know how it was possible. And the first significant story is this. In Japan, we were able to start up an operation without even setting foot in Japan and at 0 costs. So what I did was this. A friend of mine told me, look, Fernando, there is an organization in Japan called JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization. Why don't you give them a call and see if these people can help you out? I got the email address, sent an email. A couple of days later, somebody responded to me and said, Fernando, can we set up a meeting with you in your office in London? I said, fair enough, yeah, sure. Let's do this. They came over to London, typical Japanese blue suits, their folders, open the folders, and say, what do you want to do? And I say, I want to open an office in Japan. How do I do that? Don't worry, here is a checklist. I'm going to send you a contact in Japan, and they're going to look after you. And so, a couple of days later, I received an email from Japan with somebody who had already programmed a series of appointments for me, a room where to stay in Japan, and a time frame. Right? So I started to work with these people, and these people, they gave me appointment with tax advisors, people who looked at the finances, accounting, They gave me legal support to understand how to employ people. They gave me a room, actually not a room, 5 seats in their offices where I could start my operation. Where on the first day in which I arrived in Japan, I had already started to advertise for employment. I had already employed a number of people. On the first day I arrived in Japan, I went into this room. I called the 4 people I had hired and said, look guys, we're going to work from this place for 50 days for free. So this is how the Japanese approached the problem. And it was absolutely spectacular because in reality, as Alpha, we could start an operation, not even being in Japan. So we did it completely, from abroad, relying on their resources over there, who did everything, that allowed us to, set up in a very, very, very short time. I do think they did the whole operation lasted something like, probably 40 days in total. And then we were able to just start and operate immediately. But on the first day I was in Japan, our translator were able to translate straight away. On the back of this, information that I had, experience I had in Japan, a couple of years later, I decided to open up in Korea. And I got to know that in Korea they have a similar organization to JETRO called KOTRA, Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency. And I said, okay, let me do the same thing. And I couldn't be more mistaken in reality, because I did exactly the same thing. I thought, well, we worked with Japan, it's going to work with Korea. So I sent the first email, no answer. I sent the second email, no answer. The third email, no answer. Then I picked up the phone and I spoke directly to a person who told me, yes, I have received your email. Thank you very much. We're about to send you some information about this. Oh, thank God, finally I got through. I wait for a couple of days, nothing. Then I called them again. What happened? Can you give me some information about how to set up an office in Korea? Yeah, we're going to do it. Again, no answer. Then I had a brilliant idea. I had a friend of mine who told me the Korea is also in the Bay Area, and I told him, why don't you go into their San Francisco office and ask them if they can give us a bit of support? He went over there, talked to them, nothing happened. I called the person in Korea to go to KOTRA and speak to them. Again, they offered some support, verbally, but then again, when I asked them, what do I have to do to set up in Korea? They didn't respond at all. So I had to change strategy completely. And my strategy was to hire somebody local in Korea, a person who I trusted, and say, look, your job now is going to be to understand how it is possible to set up a company in Korea. And at that point, we started to deal with a number of things. In Korea, we did an awful lot of bureaucracy. You have to do documents, then you have to do documents, you have to do documents on top of other documents. The paperwork is quite massive. And so you have to legalize, notarize, certify, etc., etc. And some of the stumbling blocks we found to start the operation in Korea were a couple of things. Number one, without registering a company, you can't really place a recruitment ad. So you can't start to recruit people that you want to hire before you're officially registered. And so you have to go through the process first, and then have the people, which in reality is a delay in itself because it took us something like 3 or 4 months to get all this the process complete. And the last thing, was the rentals. Korea has got a funny thing. For a small company like a relatively small company like us, they arrange rentals with a deposit which is in the range of 10 months. So, which is a huge amount of money to put up front, to just have something in which you're not going to have anybody or very few people at the beginning, which was a bit of a stumbling block for us and took us a long time to resolve. And then we go back to the time in which I set up Japan, and I had to do things in China. So still, thinking about Japan and the fact that they had JETRO, etc., we started to try and find information about incubation agencies in China, and they do exist. Still, they do exist, but the information on what they do and how they do things is completely imprescrutable. We couldn't really figure it out how to make a possible working relationship with them. So we asked the first one, we asked the second one, we didn't go anywhere. So in reality, what we did was to start and establish a set of connections in China, mostly through Jie, who is sitting in the audience here today, and primarily with her family. So we had Jie working and trying to find information in China, the mother of Jie, who had some connections in China. We had the uncle of Jie, who had some extra connections, And some of the family members who all of a sudden made a difficult operation possible within China. So my experience in China is that everything is relatively easy to set up if you know the right people. And if you know the right people, they will know the right people themselves, who will eventually, make everything possible. So that's the story. But of course, this problem of information is also related to dealing with changing rules and regulation. The problem is that in China, very often you find something changes all of a sudden. You don't have the information. You don't know that it happened. And so you always have to struggle a bit with something that has all of a sudden changed and nobody tells you it has changed. And the funny story that we had is this. In China, to set up an operation, we had something called a fully owned foreign enterprise, right? In order to do that, you need to do a process which is called capital verification. Basically, what you do, you send some money from abroad over to an entity here in China, and they verify that you are investing. So we had to send over to China $50,000. Now, ourselves, we're not Huawei, we are not Adobe, and so we couldn't send the $50,000 immediately, and so we decided to do it in 3 chances, in three installments, right? So over a number of months. So we sent the first one, it went fine. We sent the second one, it went fine. We sent the third one, and something happened there. And what happened was that we had to send something like $300, or a figure like that. The exchange rate between the people we were sending the money to and the exchange rate of the people who are in charge of granting the capital verification is different. So with these $300, we had to battle for a couple of months to let them understand that that was the final payment for the capital verification, and we had to do it 4 times, to try and find a balance between the 2 different exchange rates within China. Funny story, isn't it? Anyway, just some tips to close this little story that I wanted to tell you today. If you want to go in Japan, seriously, get in touch with Jeto today. They're going to look after you. You're going to be up and running in no time. If you want to go to Korea, get ready to go there, do a bit of DIY, do your paperwork ahead of time, so do all the legalization, certification, notarization, etc., and also prepare for the rental deposit shock. For China, I think I said it all, didn't I? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If you want to know how to do it physically and you want to receive a checklist, speak to Andrew Ulrich. I'll be more than happy to assist you in that.